All right, welcome. If that pesky check engine light has popped on and thrown you a cryptic clue, well, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to decode one of the most common automotive mysteries out there, the dreaded P0174 code. Let's crack this thing together.
So there it is, that little orange light staring back at you. You plug in a scanner and it spits out a single lead, P0174. It sounds super technical, right? But it's really just a message. Your car is trying to tell you something. So let's figure out what it's saying. Here's our game plan. First, we'll figure out what this clue even means. Then, we'll dive into what too lean is all about. We'll look at our two main suspects, unmetered air and fuel delivery issues. And finally, we'll lay out a simple, step-by-step action plan to get this thing solved.
All right, let's get into it. The investigation starts now. That check engine light is like the alarm bell, but the P0174 code, that's the note left at the scene of the crime, and it's our job to figure out what it says.
So, what's the secret message in P0174? It's all about an unbalanced recipe. Think of your engine's computer as the chef. It's constantly tasting the exhaust fumes to make sure the mix of air and fuel is just right. But on one side of the engine, bank 2, it senses a problem. Way too much air and not nearly enough fuel. It tries to fix it, adding more fuel, but it can only adjust so much. When it hits its limit and still can't fix the recipe, it turns on the light.
Okay, so let's really break down that phrase, system too lean. It sounds like weird jargon, but it's a very specific diagnosis, and understanding it is absolutely the key to finding the real problem.
The easiest way to think about it is like your engine's diet. A rich mixture is like it's eating too much, way too much fuel for the amount of air. But a lean mixture, and that's our problem, is the total opposite. The engine is essentially being starved. It's getting all this air, but just a tiny little sip of fuel. And that can cause all sorts of issues, like poor performance, hesitation, and it's just not good for the engine long term. And what about that bank 2 part? What's that all about? Well, on any engine that's shaped like a V, a V6 or a V8, you have two sides, or banks, of cylinders. Bank 1 is always the side that has the number 1 cylinder. So bank 2, it's just the other side. This is an amazing clue because it tells us the problem is happening on just one specific side of the engine. Okay, time to bring in our prime suspect. I'm telling you, in the vast majority of P0174 cases, the culprit is what we call unmetered air. Basically, it's air that's sneaking into the engine after the main sensor that's supposed to measure it. This extra uncounted air just throws the whole fuel calculation way off.
So where is this sneaky air getting in? Well, you've got your usual suspects. Over time, those rubber vacuum hoses, especially for the PCV system, they just get old, brittle, and they crack. The intake manifold gasket could spring a leak, or sometimes it's as simple as a vacuum line that just popped off. Any of these can suck in extra air and cause that lean condition on bank 2.
Now, finding these invisible leaks is where it gets interesting. The pro method is a smoke test. A machine fills the whole intake system with a harmless smoke, and you just watch. Wherever you see a little puff of smoke coming out, bam, that's your leak. Now, a really common DIY method is to carefully spray something like carb cleaner around the hoses while the engine's running. If the engine idle suddenly revs up or stumbles, that's because it just sucked that fluid right into the leak.
Another potential bad guy here is the mass airflow sensor, or MAF for short. It's like the bouncer at the front door of your engine, counting every bit of air that comes in. But if that sensor gets dirty, if it gets coated in gunk, it can't count right. It ends up underreporting the amount of air, so the computer injects too little fuel. And what do you get? A lean condition. A lot of times just cleaning it with a special mass sensor cleaner can fix the whole problem.
So this is absolutely crucial. How do you know where to even start looking? It's simple. Check for other codes. If you only have P0174, the problem is almost guaranteed to be specific to bank 2, like a vacuum leak right on that side. But if you have both P0171 for bank 1 and P0174 for bank 2, that means the problem is affecting the entire engine. That points you away from a simple vacuum leak and straight toward a system-wide issue, like that dirty MAF sensor or maybe a fuel supply problem. All right, let's look at our second major suspect, a lack of fuel. Because if the engine isn't getting enough gasoline to match the air it's taking in, well, you're going to get a lean code. This time the problem isn't too much air, it's just plain not enough fuel. This can happen pretty much anywhere along the fuel's journey. You might have a fuel pump that's just getting old and weak and can't create enough pressure. The fuel filter could be totally clogged with gunk, choking off the flow. Or, and this is more specific to our P0174 code, you could have a fuel injector on bank 2 that's clogged up and not spraying enough gas.
And this brings us right back to that brilliant diagnostic clue we just talked about. A problem like a weak fuel pump or a clogged filter, it's going to starve the whole engine, not just one side, right? So if you're dealing with a fuel delivery issue like that, you are almost always going to see both the P0171 and the P0174 codes together. Now, here's a tricky one that can really throw you for a loop: an exhaust leak. You'd think a leak out of the exhaust wouldn't matter, but if you get a tiny crack in the exhaust manifold right before the oxygen sensor on bank 2, it can actually suck in a little bit of outside air. This false air goes past the sensor and completely fools it into thinking the engine is running lean, even when the mix inside the engine is perfect.
Okay, we've met the suspects, we've reviewed all the evidence. Now let's put it all together into a logical, step-by-step action plan to finally solve this P0174 mystery once and for all.
Our plan is all about following the path of what's most likely. We start with our biggest clue, then we go after the most common cause. We'll check all the easy, cheap stuff first before we even think about diving into more complex tests. Trust me, this order is going to save you a ton of time and headaches. First things first, and I cannot stress this enough, confirm what you're up against. Do you have a lone P0174 code? If you do, your brain should immediately start thinking about things that only affect bank 2. But if you've got P0171 there too, now you're looking for a problem that affects the whole engine. This one step tells you exactly which path to go down. Okay, so let's say you only have the P0174 code. Your very next move is to hunt for the number one cause, a vacuum leak. Start with a good visual inspection. Get a flashlight in there and really look at every single hose around bank 2. Look for cracks, anything that looks disconnected or brittle. But for those really sneaky hidden leaks, a smoke test is by far the best way to find them. Now, what if you've ruled out the big, system-wide problems and you just can't find a vacuum leak? Well, it's time to zoom in. The final step is to investigate the parts that only serve bank 2. This means you're looking at the fuel injectors on that side to see if they're clogged, or you're carefully inspecting that bank 2 exhaust manifold for any tiny cracks that could be letting in that false air. And there you have it, case closed. We've seen how that one little code, P0174, can lead us down a totally logical path of deduction. Just remember that golden rule. Always check to see if it has its partner in crime, P0171, because that tells you whether you're dealing with a local problem or a system-wide one. So, with that in mind, what's one preventative thing you can do to stop the next mystery before it starts? Maybe just a quick check of your vacuum hoses next time you do an oil change? After all, the best automotive mystery is the one you never have to solve in the first place.